We've all imagined what it would be like to be in the Walking Dead universe. And you know what? It's just such an interesting topic to think and talk about. So I've decided to list everything people get wrong about The Walking Dead, starting with one people overlook, the title. Most people think The Walking Dead refers to the zombies. It doesn't. The phrase describes the survivors, not the undead shambling through Georgia. Creator Robert Kirkman built the entire franchise around this twist, and Rick spells it out directly in Season 5 when he tells the group, "We are the Walking Dead. The zombies are just environmental hazards." The real focus is on people stumbling through a world that already killed them, going through motions, surviving without living. This misconception shapes how people judge the show. They expect zombie horror when the series delivers human drama with occasional walker encounters. Early seasons lean heavier into undead threats, but by the time you hit the Savior's arc or the Commonwealth, walkers barely matter. They're background noise. The title warned you from episode 1 that this wasn't a zombie story. It was a survival tragedy about people who died the moment civilization collapsed. They just haven't stopped moving yet. Fans who missed that detail spent years complaining about too much talking and not enough zombie action, completely missing the point Kirkman hammered home in multiple interviews. The Walking Dead universe never cared about the monsters. It cared about watching decent people turn monstrous or die trying to stay decent. But if survivors are the real Walking Dead, that raises a darker question. Why do characters keep calling them walkers? Keep that in mind, because the answer connects to something the show's universe is hiding, something that makes the entire outbreak even more terrifying than you realized. Zombie terminology. People assume characters avoid saying zombie because it sounds silly or outdated. The actual reason runs deeper and weirder. The Walking Dead universe never had zombie fiction. No Romero films, no Resident Evil games, no zombie novels or comics. The concept didn't exist in their pop culture, which explains why Rick's group acts confused when corpses start walking around eating people. They have no cultural framework for undead cannibals. This creative choice separates TWD from every other zombie property. In most outbreak stories, characters recognize zombies immediately because they've seen Dawn of the Dead or played Left 4 Dead. Here, they invent new terminology on the spot. The main show settles on walkers. Fear the Walking Dead uses empties. Comic characters throw around biters and roamers. Each group creates its own language for the same threat because nobody has a shared reference point. It's a small detail that makes the world feel genuinely isolated, except the rule breaks constantly. Characters occasionally slip and reference zombie movies or concepts that shouldn't exist. Eagle-eyed fans caught these errors and started questioning whether the zombie-free universe was consistent or just poorly enforced. Except here's where it gets weird. If zombie fiction never existed, why did the outbreak spread so fast? Think about it. Because what comes next explains why everyone died in the first weeks, and it's not what you think. The answer matters less than the attempt. Kirkman wanted a world where humanity faces a completely unprecedented threat, not a virus they recognize from horror movies. Whether he succeeded depends on how much you care about occasional continuity slips versus thematic intention. Of course, once you realize the universe has no zombie fiction, you start wondering where the virus even came from. And that's where things get complicated. Virus origins. The fan base generated dozens of theories about what caused the outbreak. Space spores, government bioweapons, CDC experiments gone wrong, mutated rabies, prion diseases, divine punishment, take your pick. None of them are canon. Robert Kirkman repeatedly stated he'd never explain the virus origin because it doesn't matter to the story. The wildfire virus exists. It reanimates dead tissue, and survivors have to deal with it. That's the entire explanation, except the spin-offs couldn't leave it alone. The Walking Dead, World Beyond revealed the virus originated in a French laboratory, giving fans the concrete answer Kirkman swore he'd never provide. This created a weird split where the main series maintains mysterious origins, while extended canon points directly at a lab accident in France. Technically, both are true. The main show never explains it. The broader franchise does. Whether you accept World Beyond's explanation as definitive depends on how much you weight spin-off content against original series intent. Meanwhile, Kirkman's own jokes muddied the water further. He once claimed space spores caused the outbreak, then immediately clarified he was kidding. Fans took it seriously anyway, and space spore theory became a meme in TWD communities. Now you've got three competing explanations: intentional mystery, French lab accident, and space spores that started as a joke. The confusion stems from franchise expansion beyond Kirkman's control and his own playful trolling. The real answer is probably that he wanted mystery, AMC wanted answers for spin-off content, and nobody coordinated the messaging. But origin confusion is just misdirection. The real question nobody asks is scarier. If the virus came from a French lab, what were they trying to create? Hold that thought, because what the virus actually does is way worse than where it came from, how infection works. This might be the single biggest misconception exception in the entire franchise. Most viewers think walker bites spread the virus. They don't. Everyone already has wildfire in their system from the moment the outbreak went global. You're infected right now, assuming you exist in TWD universe. The virus activates when you die, regardless of how death occurs. Car crash, gunshot, heart attack, old age, doesn't matter. You die, you turn, end of story. So what do bites do? They kill you through septic bacterial infection. Walker mouths are disgusting cesspools of bacteria from eating rotten meat and never brushing their teeth. A bite introduces that bacteria into your bloodstream, you develop sepsis, you die from the infection, then wildfire activates and reanimates your corpse. The bite doesn't transmit the virus. It just kills you fast enough that the virus you already have can do its job. Scratches work the same way if they're deep enough to introduce bacteria. This distinction matters for understanding survivor behavior. Characters don't fear bites because they'll catch the zombie virus. They fear bites because they're fatal injuries with no antibiotic cure in the apocalypse. The reveal that everyone's infected changes everything. It means mercy killings are necessary. It means you can't trust anyone who dies from natural causes. It means the virus isn't something you can avoid through careful quarantine. You're already carrying it. The apocalypse is inside you, waiting for your heart to stop. Dr. Jenner explains this directly in Season 1 at the CDC, yet fans still argue about bite transmission years later. The information is right there in the show. People just don't want to believe it because it makes the situation so much worse. A transmissible virus you can avoid is survivable. A virus already in everyone that activates on death is extinction waiting to happen, which makes you wonder why walkers behave so differently across seasons. If everyone has the same virus, why do early zombies act smart while later ones are mindless? The answer involves something that happened off-screen: smart walkers. Season 1 walkers do things that later walkers can't. They climb chain-link fences, use rocks to smash windows, turn door handles, and generally display problem-solving skills. By Season 2, walkers are mindless corpses that follow noise and stumble forward until something stops them. Fans developed elaborate theories about brain decay causing intelligence loss over time. Walkers start smart and gradually rot into stupid versions. It's a neat explanation that makes logical sense. It's also completely wrong. Smart walkers disappeared because Frank Darabont got fired. Darabont directed the pilot and envisioned walkers as evolving threats with residual human intelligence. When AMC replaced him after Season 1, new showrunners decided mindless zombies worked better for long-term storytelling. The change had nothing to do with in-universe biology. It was a creative decision based on behind-the-scenes drama. Smart walkers were retconned out of existence because the new team wanted simpler monsters. This creates a weird continuity problem where Season 1 feels disconnected from the rest of the series. Characters in later seasons treat walkers like mobile hazards roughly as dangerous as broken glass. Season 1 survivors face calculating predators who learn and adapt. The tonal shift is jarring if you binge the series, and it stems entirely from production chaos rather than intentional narrative evolution. Fans who craft theories about brain decay or viral mutations are trying to explain a change that happened in conference rooms, not in the writer's room. But production chaos changing walker intelligence is nothing compared to what happened with the actors, because some of the show's biggest deaths weren't planned at all, and one actor found out their character was dying the worst way possible. Before we go any further, I have just released my merch store with a very exclusive limited edition early supporter bundle. Only the first 50 people will have access to this bundle, so get it quickly while you still can at hownottodie.store. Okay, back to the video. Actor departures. The fanbase loves conspiracy theories about actors getting written out because they wanted to leave. Carl's death sparked massive speculation that Chandler Riggs wanted out for college. Maggie's reduced screen time got blamed on Lauren Cohan's contract disputes. T-Dog's early death was supposedly because the actor had better opportunities. Most of these theories are either exaggerated or completely fabricated. Carl's death was a creative decision by showrunner Scott Gimple, not a request from Chandler Riggs. In fact, Riggs bought a house near the filming location right before learning his character was getting killed off, suggesting he fully expected to continue. Lauren Cohan did have contract negotiations, but her reduced role came from those talks, not from her wanting to quit. She returned for later seasons and spin-off content. T-Dog actor Irony Singleton has spoken about wanting more screen time, not less, before his character died. The truth is that actors leave jobs for complex reasons, mixing creative differences, money, scheduling conflicts, and personal life changes. Reducing every departure to "they wanted out" ignores how television production actually works. Sometimes writers kill characters for story reasons. Sometimes budget cuts force difficult choices. Sometimes actors do want to leave, but often they get pushed out by decisions beyond their control. The Walking Dead had its share of both, and pretending every death stems from actor requests oversimplifies a complicated production. Carl's death remains controversial controversial for another reason, though. It completely broke comic canon, which brings up something fans refuse to accept. How different is the show from the comics, really? The answer is shocking, and it means every comic reader wasted years expecting storylines that were never going to happen. Comic accuracy. Casual fans assume the TV show closely follows the comic storyline with minor changes. That's not even close to accurate. The Walking Dead TV series uses comics as loose inspiration while telling a fundamentally different story. Major characters die in completely different ways. Entire arcs get rearranged or eliminated, and the ending diverges so far from source material they barely share DNA. Start with character deaths. Carl survives in the comics and becomes a central figure in the final arcs, representing hope for the next generation. TV Carl dies halfway through the series run. Shane dies early in both versions, but survives much longer in the show. Carol becomes a warrior badass in the show, while comic Carol is fragile and suicidal, dying early from walker bite after a breakdown. Andrea is a major comic character who survives almost to the end. TV Andrea dies in Season 3, hated by most fans. These aren't minor adjustments. These are fundamental character reimaginings. Then you've got entire storylines that exist in one version but not the other. The TV show invents Daryl Dixon, who becomes the most popular character despite never appearing in comics. His brother Merle, the governor's daughter Penny, and dozens of other characters are TV originals. Meanwhile, comic characters like Tyrese's daughter Julie, or the twin boys Ben and Billy never make it to screen. The Saviors arc happens in both, but plays out with different beats and casualties. The Commonwealth exists in both, but the TV version rushes through what comics spent years developing. By the final season, the show tells a completely different story than the comics concluded with. Rick disappears via helicopter instead of dying of old age. The war with the Whisperers ends differently. The entire structure of post-apocalypse civilization looks distinct. Treating the show as a direct adaptation sets false expectations. It's better understood as an alternate universe exploring similar themes with some shared characters. Expecting comic accuracy from The Walking Dead is like expecting Game of Thrones to follow the books exactly. It was never the plan. Of course, massive changes between comics and show create another problem. Fans swear they remember events that never happened. But here's the twist. Sometimes they're not wrong. Sometimes the show did film those scenes. They just didn't air them until now. Cliffhangers and fake-outs. The Walking Dead earned a reputation for manipulative storytelling, especially around character deaths. The most infamous example is Glenn's dumpster survival. The show heavily implied Glenn died in a walker feeding frenzy, milked the ambiguity for weeks, then revealed he survived by hiding under a dumpster while another character got eaten above him. Fans felt cheated, and the backlash was severe. But here's the thing. The show never explicitly confirmed Glenn died. The framing suggested it, the editing implied it, but careful viewers could spot the inconsistencies. The controversy stems from audiences assuming the show would play fair with death scenes. It wouldn't and didn't. The Walking Dead regularly used unreliable framing to create false tension, betting that weekly viewing schedules would maximize anxiety between episodes. Season 6's finale took this approach to its breaking point. The episode ends with Negan about to kill someone from Rick's group. The camera switches to victim POV as Lucille comes down, but we don't see who dies. Fans waited 6 months to learn it was Abraham and Glenn. The cliffhanger generated massive hype, but also massive resentment. It felt like cheap manipulation rather than genuine storytelling tension. The ratings bump from curiosity couldn't compensate for trust damage. These tricks work better in comics where you can immediately flip pages to resolve tension. Television's week-long or season-long gaps turn clever misdirection into frustrating audience punishment. The Walking Dead leaned too hard on cliffhangers and fake-outs, training viewers to assume character deaths weren't real until multiple episodes confirmed them. It's the opposite of the emotional impact the show wanted. When Andrea actually died, some fans assumed she'd come back because the show cried wolf too many times. And speaking of things that should have died but didn't, the walkers themselves break the show's logic. Because if decomposition works like it should, the series would have ended by Season 3. Walker longevity. Zombies rot. That's basic biology. Exposed to elements, attacked by insects and scavengers, lacking immune systems to fight bacteria. Corpses should decompose completely within months. By Season 5, walkers should be skeletal remains barely held together. By Season 11, there shouldn't be any walkers left. They should have rotted into puddles years ago, except they don't. Massive hordes still shamble through later seasons looking mostly intact aside from some extra decay makeup. The show never addresses this directly, leading fans to craft theories about the virus preserving tissue or slowing decomposition. Some Some point to embalming chemicals. Others suggest cold weather slows the process. Creative explanations for a simple problem. Realistic decay would end the zombie threat, concluding the series. Scientists who study decomposition point out how absurd walker preservation is. In reality, soft tissue breaks down fast. Insects lay eggs that hatch into larvae that consume flesh. Bacteria spreads from the gut throughout the body. Weather accelerates everything. A corpse left outside becomes mostly skeleton within a year in temperate climates, faster in heat and humidity. Georgia summers should reduce walkers to bone fragments between seasons. Instead, they persist indefinitely. The Walking Dead isn't unique here. Every long-running zombie property ignores decay because acknowledging it ends the story. The comic addresses this slightly better by moving through time faster, but even Kirkman's timeline doesn't track with real decomposition rates. Fans who point out the inconsistency are technically right. They're also missing the point. It's a narrative convenience everyone agrees to ignore so the show can continue. Expecting scientific accuracy from walking corpses is silly, but it's still one of the most common complaints in discussions about what TWD gets wrong about its own premise. At least, walker biology follows bad science consistently. Resources don't even pretend to make sense. But the real issue isn't infinite bullets or magic gasoline. It's what those unlimited resources reveal about what kind of show this actually is. Infinite everything. Ammunition doesn't grow on trees. Gasoline expires after a few months. Prescription medications lose potency. Canned food has expiration dates. The Walking Dead ignores all of this with breathtaking consistency. Characters fire hundreds of rounds without reloading. Cars run perfectly years after the last refinery closed. People find perfectly good supplies in abandoned stores a decade after the collapse. Rick's Python holds 6 rounds. He fires it approximately 6,000 times per season without reloading. Daryl's crossbow requires physical bolts that should run out fast. He never seems to worry about ammunition. The group's vehicles run smoothly despite using gas that should have degraded into useless sludge years ago. Survivors raid pharmacies for medicine that should have expired or been looted in the first weeks of the outbreak. The show occasionally nods toward resource scarcity, but mostly ignores logistics completely. This isn't accidental. The Walking Dead focuses on human conflict, not survival mechanics. Worrying about bullet counts and gas degradation would slow the story to a crawl. The show wants Rick shooting it out with the governor, not carefully rationing ammunition and planning supply runs. It's a deliberate choice to prioritize drama over realism. Video game adaptations handle resources better because survival mechanics are core gameplay. The show and comics treat them as background details that would bore the audience if examined closely, but treating resources as background details creates a bigger problem. If the show ignores survival basics, why do characters keep making fatal tactical mistakes? The answer reveals something embarrassing about the entire series: security incompetence. Military consultants who analyze The Walking Dead tore apart the group's security decisions, setting up camp without sentries, failing to clear buildings properly, ignoring high ground advantages, leaving vehicles unsecured, making noise unnecessarily. The list goes on. Every settlement the survivors build has obvious defensive weaknesses that any competent force exploits immediately. Alexandria has strong walls, but terrible guard rotations and no interior fallback points. The prison has great sight lines, but the group fails to secure the perimeter properly, leading to repeated invasions. Hilltop sits on high ground, but has walls that wouldn't stop a determined assault. These aren't nitpicks. They're fundamental failures that would get everyone killed in an actual apocalypse scenario. The show occasionally lampshades this. Characters make stupid decisions, pay for it, then make the same mistakes again. It's supposed to highlight human error and hubris. In practice, it makes the survivors look incompetent. By season 6, these people have years of experience, yet they still split up, wander alone, and ignore basic security protocols. Either they're learning nothing or the writers need them to make mistakes for plot reasons. Real military veterans point out that basic training covers most of what TWD characters ignore: set perimeters, establish fields of fire, maintain noise discipline, secure your 6. These aren't advanced tactics. They're fundamentals that any group surviving multiple years would internalize. The survivors' continued incompetence strains credibility, especially when facing organized enemies like the Saviors or Whisperers, who also make baffling tactical errors. Everyone's bad at warfare, which creates drama but undermines the idea that humanity could rebuild. Of course, security incompetence matters less when different versions contradict each other completely. Because here's what most fans don't realize. That scene you remember? It might have happened in the game, not the show. And mixing them up reveals the franchise's biggest structural problem: cross-media confusion. The Walking Dead exists across multiple formats, and fans regularly confuse which details belong to which version. This creates misconceptions where people argue about events that never happened in the version they're discussing. It's worse than comic versus show debates. It's games versus comics versus spin-offs versus webisodes, all blending together in collective memory. Telltale's Walking Dead games follow comic continuity, not the show. Characters like Glenn and Herschel appear before their TV introduction, leading to confusion about timeline. The games feature Clementine, arguably the franchise's most beloved character, who doesn't exist outside that medium. Players familiar with her story sometimes assume she appears in other TWD media. She doesn't. She's game exclusive. Fear the Walking Dead is a prequel showing the outbreak's beginning, something the main show skipped. Fans confuse FTWD revelations about early Outbreak days with original series events. World Beyond introduces the CRM, a major organization that doesn't appear in comics. Dead City features variant walkers with acid blood, abilities never mentioned elsewhere. Daryl Dixon shows evolved zombie types in France. Each expansion adds lore that contradicts or complicates what came before. This fragmentation means The Walking Dead isn't one story anymore. It's a loosely connected universe where canon depends on which entry point you consider primary. Comic readers view the show as alternate universe fan fiction. Show watchers ignore game events as non-canon. Everyone treats spin-offs differently based on how much they care. There's no single correct version of TWD lore, which makes arguments about what's wrong nearly impossible to resolve. You can only be wrong relative to whichever version you're discussing. At least everyone agrees the show ran too long, except they don't, because the moment TWD supposedly jumped the shark changes depending on who you ask, and one fan theory claims it never actually declined. When it jumped the shark, ask 10 Walking Dead fans when the show went bad, and you'll get 10 different answers. Some say Negan's introduction ruined it. Others blame the all-out war arc. Plenty jumped ship after Carl died. The Whisperers divided audiences further. Everyone has their personal breaking point where the series lost them. Here's the thing, The Walking Dead never had a single quality level. It oscillated between brilliant television and unwatchable trash, sometimes within the same season. Season 2's farm arc dragged for half a season before delivering incredible character moments. Season 4 split between governor melodrama and genuine horror. Season 6 had Glenn's dumpster fake-out and the infuriating cliffhanger. The show's been inconsistent from day one. Blaming a single moment for ruining TWD ignores that it was always messy. The Shane conflict elevated Season 2 after a slow start. The prison era balanced action and character development better than most seasons. The Terminus Cannibals delivered genuine horror, but these highlights existed alongside terrible pacing, character assassinations, and plot armor so thick you could stop bullets. The show never maintained quality consistently enough to have one clear jump-the-shark moment. If anything, the show's biggest mistake was lasting 11 seasons instead of ending at 5 or 6. Not because quality uniformly declined, but because the core concept wears thin. How many times can you watch a group find sanctuary, lose sanctuary, and move on? The repetitive structure became obvious by Season 7, and the series never found a way to evolve beyond it. Different villains, same cycle. The Whisperers should have been the final threat, narratively speaking. Everything after felt like epilogues stretched into multiple seasons. But maybe the show's biggest mistake wasn't length or quality. Maybe it was promising answers about the bigger world and then refusing to deliver. Except here's the thing, those answers exist. They've always existed. The show just hid them in places most fans never looked. The conspiracy that wasn't. Since day one, fans demanded answers about the virus, the government response, what happened globally, whether there's a cure. The show dangled these questions without resolving them, leading to conspiracy theories about Kirkman having a master plan he refused to reveal. Surely the CDC, the military, world governments. Someone understood the outbreak and had information survivors could find. Kirkman stated repeatedly he had no interest in these answers. The Walking Dead isn't about solving the apocalypse. It's about living in it. Learning the virus came from a French lab doesn't change anything for Rick's group. Knowing the government collapsed matters less than dealing with the governor. A cure subplot would shift the genre from survival horror to medical thriller. None of these answers serve the story Kirkman wanted to tell, but AMC couldn't resist expanding. Spin-offs started filling in backstory and world building the original series intentionally avoided. World Beyond reveals virus origins. Fear shows the outbreak's beginning. Daryl Dixon suggests variant evolution. Each edition undermines the original's commitment to leaving questions unanswered. What started as deliberate mystery became abandoned plot threads that spin-offs had to address. This creates a divide between fans who wanted answers and fans who appreciated the mystery. Neither group is wrong. The show simply tried serving both without committing to either. Kirkman's "we'll never explain it" promise lasted until franchise expansion demanded explanation. Now we're stuck with partial answers that satisfy nobody. The virus came from France, but how it escaped remains vague. Governments fell, but the details are fuzzy. It's the worst of both approaches. Mystery undermined without delivering clarity. And that leads to the franchise's ultimate lie, the one misconception that towers above everything else. Because The Walking Dead convinced millions of fans they were watching a zombie show. They weren't. They never were. And realizing what you actually watched changes everything you thought you understood about the past 11 seasons. And that ultimately defines what people get wrong about The Walking Dead. It's not one thing. It's dozens of misconceptions layered across years of content, production drama, and franchise expansion. Fans expect consistency the show never promised. They demand answers to questions the creator found boring. They blend media that tell different stories in the same universe. They remember events that never happened because fake-outs and cliffhangers train them to distrust everything. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the greatest zombie movies in human history, click the video on the screen.